Good afternoon. Okay, do I have a cue to proceed? Comrade Amos, thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the media. This afternoon, the African National Congress communicates the decisions of its National Working Committee that took place on the 31st of July. We are going to pay particular emphasis on the decisions of the National Working Committee having been endorsed by the National Executive Committee regarding the candidate selection process and guidelines for the deployment of the ANC's public representatives in the coming future. But we also spend the time to communicate decisions of the ANC coming out of its National Working Committee regarding other matters that are organizational as well as political. We start off by acknowledging a momentous period in our lives as South Africans as we enter the Women's Month, commemorating the heroic sacrifices made by women in the struggle against oppression and gender oppression in particular. We pay tribute to the countless women who have made indelible mark in our society and the reconstruction and development of South Africa as we know it today. Even in post-apartheid South Africa, it is the women who continue to hold up society as they confront the structural challenges in our society which foment poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Amidst this, women have to deal with the new pandemic in the form of gender-based violence and femicide, which cuts across all races and genders. Particularly, patriarchy and toxic masculinities permeate our social fabric to the detriment of women in societies and their development as a whole. So against this background, that in the midst of all that gloom and the pandemic that we're talking about, we must celebrate Banyana Banyana historic victory today at the FIFA World Cup, and they are advancing to the tournament's knockout stages. This is a momentous achievement for not just football lovers in our nation, but women as a whole, not just in South Africa, but in our continent and the world over. As we enter Women's Month, this accomplishment pays tribute to past heroines such as Istwalandwe, Sophie de Bruyn, and many of those that continue to be a mirror against which we should look at what we do to advance the position of women in society. I want to now turn to the National Working Committee outcomes that I've spoken about earlier. The NWC of the ANC met on July 31st, 2023 to discuss various developments, including the successful conclusion of the national conferences by all the leagues of the ANC, namely the ANC Youth League, Women's League, and the Veterans League, which was the last to be concluded this past weekend. This is a significant aspect of the ongoing renewal process of the ANC as an organization, as a liberation movement. With the upcoming national general elections in 2024, the ANC is now focused on consolidating our branches, our regions, and all our structures to focus on a decisive win. The National Working Committee also acknowledged the improved efficiency of our internal systems and other processes enabling the organization to discharge its mandate better. By completing national conferences across all the leagues, the ANC has demonstrated its dedication to building a robust, revolutionary organization that can deliver on national transformation and meet the socio-economic needs of our people and hasten and accelerating the pace of service delivery activities related to governance and all of that. Turning to the African National Congress Veterans League, we have just recently concluded the Veterans League conference over the weekend, and it is an optimistic and a very joyous moment to indicate the success of that conference, restoring hope in unleashing and evoking some of the finest traditions of the African National Congress, as demonstrated by that Congress. President Cyril Ramaphosa recently spoke at that conference and commended the vital role that veterans continue to play in enhancing the organization's leadership. As veterans, they play an increasingly significant role in society, and they inspire others to do the same. The Veterans League will now be responsible for the political education of members of the ANC, whilst serving as the moral compass of the organization. This is just part among the many other responsibilities that are expected of the Veterans League. But we do wish to say that it is quite historic that we're now sitting at a point where our veterans are well organized and well oiled to help in the renewal and the unification of the African National Congress. I now turn to the Women's League. Equally, the Women's League successful national conference is a significant step toward promoting gender equality and women's emancipation, not only within the African National Congress, but in South Africa as a whole. The election of officials of the National Executive Committee of the Women's League provides hope for progress in these crucial areas. And leadership of the Women's League, we look forward to seeing policy actions that will empower women and achieve gender equality, driven by implementing comprehensive measures focused on prevention, changing social norms, and eliminating discriminatory laws and policies to combat many things, and among those, gender-based violence and femicide, and making sure that there is substantive representation of women, both in representative terms as well as in descriptive terms, in substantive terms in society. We now turn to talk about peace and stability in the nation. Recent incidents involving bold and aggressive criminal measures to combat crime. There's a need to increase law enforcement presence and strengthen crime prevention strategies, including enhancing crime intelligence to prevent violent crimes. Government must establish a dedicated national security unit to combat illegal mining, threatening revenue and the lives of our people. The National Working Committee also urges government to stop criminal activities such as arson against trucks, which amounts to economic sabotage in our nation. Regional issues on crime, security, and migration were also brought under very sharp focus in the discussions of the National Working Committee. It was emphasized that regional political parties must take action on these issues, and that government-to-government meetings are necessary and are a matter of urgency. The President underlined the significance of providing sufficient resources to the security cluster, particularly the South African National Defence Force and the South African Police Service, to combat crime and deal with natural disasters as efficiently as possible. The National Working Committee commends the Asset Forfeiture Unit's ongoing work to combat corruption, as over 10.2 billion of cash and assets have been frozen, and 2.83 billion has successfully been recovered over the past 4 years. We do think that this is work in the correct direction. Additionally, 2.55 billion has been reclaimed from the proceeds of crime and corruption related to state capture investigations. And so the narrative about the fact that we're not recovering anything that has been lost through the corrupt practices uncovered by the state capture investigations, beginning to put some of those assertions to rest. The NWC also welcomes further initiatives by the Anti-Corruption Task Team, located in the Financial Intelligence Center, which harnesses various law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community to optimize combating various financial, organized, and economic crimes. The ultimate goal is to ensure that South Africa succeeds in tackling crime and corruption wherever and whenever it arises. I want to speak now about the discussions of the NWC about building a better Africa and a better world, which forms part of the pillars of the ANC's six-layered strategy adopted on January 8 this year. During the NWC meeting, President Cyril Ramaphosa provided updates on the Africa-Russia summit held in St. Petersburg, Russia. The attendees discussed a possible review of the trend where one country invites the entire continent to their country to discuss development issues. The President shared a declaration that was adopted at that summit, the Africa-Russia summit, aligning with South Africa's progressive views on global and continental development issues, including non-alignment and anti-war stances. President Putin also expressed gratitude to the African Leaders' Peace Initiative and Russia's willingness to consider and comply with the 10-point plan proposal presented in Ukraine in Russia. This is, of course, on the occasion of President Cyril Ramaphosa alongside other African leaders in their visit to Russia and Ukraine. President Cyril Ramaphosa provided an additional insight on the bilateral meeting between South Africa and Russia, where President Putin expressed his desire for a peaceful resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. These ideals are underpinned by the UN Charter and they promote equality, peace, cooperation, non-racism, non-sexism, and prosperity for all nations. President Ramaphosa will further provide details of these bilateral trade relations between South Africa and Russia, but we can say that a lot of work is happening and unfolding in that space. Further, the NWC noted ongoing elections in Zimbabwe, the upcoming elections in Eswatini, and of course the ongoing requirement and the need for South Africa to support through observer missions to these countries, and this is something that the government and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation would be seized with. On the matter of coalitions, which has been a subject of much discussion, including at the recent Veterans League conference, the policy posture by the ANC on coalitions is that of advancing the principle that the party with the highest votes should be allowed to form a government so that service delivery is not hampered by endless political posturing. Whether that party is the ANC or any other party, respect for majoritarian rule is what has been emphasized by the National Working Committee, strengthening its official position anyway on our coalitions framework. It was also emphasized that another principle governing any coalition must be shared moral values. In other words, those that we go into a coalition with, we must have a particular ethical and a moral standard that we uphold together. And this is what has also been emphasized in the conversations of the National Working Committee. Deputy President, Comrade Paul Mashatile, will lead this process to consolidate the ANC stance on coalitions as well as through his work deployed by the President in government. We reiterate that this is solely about hung municipalities and not the national general elections, because in as far as the national general elections, our aim as the African National Congress is to outrightly win those elections to advance and accelerate the national transformation agenda. I now turn to the Litsima campaign, which we in the ANC is a program that aims to connect with communities by performing acts of service that are aimed at addressing some of the service delivery backlogs that we encounter. The campaign will be rolled out in provinces beginning with the Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Eastern Cape. Disima is our Lodestar program, which seeks to entrench renewal in branches by ensuring that our activists are engaged in servant leadership activities. On Mangaung by-elections, this is in the Free State, NWC noted that among the various by-elections conducted recently, the ANC restored its control of the Mangaung municipality, enabling accelerated service delivery to our people in the Free State and in Mangaung. This, of course, happening against a backdrop of a lot of instability in the recent past. And so we are quite happy that the people of the Free State and the people of Mangaung have once again restored their confidence in the African National Congress to help with effective and sound local governance. The National Voter Registration Campaign. As we approach the national general elections in 2024, the ANC will continue with its voter registration drive to encourage all South Africans to exercise their democratic right to vote. We will review all our various voter registration targets and focus on regional mobilization in all our provinces, ensuring that we educate young people and inculcate a culture of political consciousness and strengthen as well as reinvigorate our traditional base. This is going to be our main focus. And so we're going to have a very spirited focus on young people, working with young people and selling the brand of the African National Congress and the story of the African National Congress and the message of the ANC. The 2019 Elections Manifesto Review. The ANC is going to be embarking on a manifesto review process. The 2019 Elections Manifesto Review. The NWC resolved that the national launch of this manifesto review process by the President of the ANC, initially scheduled for the August 19, 2023 at the Jabulani Amphitheatre, will now be held on the 1st of September at the Orlando Stadium in Soweto. The President will address the national launch and will focus on the impact of policies and programs concerning this manifesto that was adopted in 2019, with a specific focus on issues such as employment creation in the country, to review the implementation of the different provincial 2019 manifestos. There is a detail in the statement that I won't read out in the interest of time. I will now move on to the last part before I call upon Chief Matsila to come and outline processes and guidelines related to the candidate selection process. This is a process that involves the selection of all of those that are going under the banner of the ANC to go and represent us in the provincial legislatures, as well as in the two houses of Parliament, the National Assembly, as well as the National Council of Provinces. We now speak to the criteria that is going to be utilized for candidates in the upcoming list process, and Chief will go into a bit of detail in relation to that, and then we will pick up a conversation. The selection process for candidates in the ANC will be extensive, and this is a process that is led by the Electoral Committee, which is one of the independent constitutional organs of the ANC under the leadership of former President, former Secretary General, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, and they will provide additional details on this matter. One of the things that we highlight in the statement is that to qualify for nomination, candidates must satisfy a specific criteria. And the ANC has really elevated how it selects and elects its representatives into the future. These criteria stipulate that candidates must possess a post-matric qualification and the requisite capacity, experience, education, or expertise to contribute positively to the relevant legislature or executive. Before registering with the IEC, all candidates will be required to have completed the 4 online modules in the OR Tambo Leadership School, and these are strategic modules and advanced level modules. These modules cover the history of the ANC, building, organizing, understanding government, and understanding the economy and sustainable development. These candidates must be in good standing as ANC members at the time of nomination to the IEC. Candidates must also have a proven track record of commitment to and involvement in the democratic movement and government, and democratic movement not limited to the ANC only, but speaking to the wider mass democratic movement. Candidates must not have a criminal record, and of course must not also have faced charges brought by the NPA unless these are political related crimes committed before April 1994 or have been found guilty of contravening the ANC Code of Conduct in the last 10 years. The ANC list must reflect the required diversity of skills, experience, and capacity, should be representative of all national groups, considering provincial demographics as well, and have a fair geographical spread throughout each province and provincial list. The list must also reflect the liberation movement character, including that of ANC members in the trade union movement, the progressive trade union movement, COSATU, the Communist Party, the progressive civic movement, SANCO, and the wider MDM and critical sectors of society. And this, of course, would be churches, faith-based communities, and many others that operate in the realm of progressive politics. It is essential to have 50% or more representation of women throughout the list, with every second candidate being female, as per Rule 6 of the ANC Constitution. The list should include sufficient or acceptable representation of young people, and I know that there's an ongoing conversation by the Youth League together with the mother body around the extent of how this must be realized. People from different sectors of society, people with disabilities, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, very crucial in this conversation, and this is something that will be looking at with very keen eyes. For continuity and government experience, list should have 50% or more candidates who are sitting or former MPs, MPLs, councillors, or senior public servants. Additionally, 50% of candidates should have the expertise needed in priority areas of economic development, rural and social development, safety and security, infrastructure, public finance, law, and international relations, etc. All candidates must agree to criminal record vetting and make financial and other interest declarations before the final nomination. They must also accept organizational decisions and abide by the ANC and the Electoral Code of Conduct. Candidates must agree to sign the deployment contracts which bind them to be loyal to the findings of the African National Congress, including redeployment and recall, as circumstances may require and may dictate from time to time. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to now invite Comrade Chief Matsila on behalf of the Electoral Committee to just walk us through to more detail in relation to how we are going to be selecting, screening, scrutinizing, and selecting those that are going to represent the African National Congress in the various sites and organs of state. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi, our spokesperson, and greetings to all the members of the media. Our chairperson normally refers to you as the Fourth Estate. He sends his greetings to you. I'm here on behalf of the Electoral Committee of the African National Congress just to announce that the process to nominate the public representatives as candidates for the African National Congress to go to Parliament and the provincial legislature in 2024 has started in earnest and is now in full swing. We started yesterday to train the branch secretaries and the chairpersons of the branches, as well as the observers or electoral officers, so that they know exactly how to handle their work in relation to the rules. So yesterday we trained about comrades from 3 provinces. That was Gauteng, Free State, as well as KwaZulu-Natal. And today, this evening, again, we're training more, and we'll conclude that training tomorrow. So in so saying, colleagues, the process is now fully open. and the Electoral Committee is very pleased that the rules that we're about to announce, as also communicated by our spokesperson, have been adopted by the National Executive Committee following recommendations from the Electoral Committee. The main purpose of the rules and the process is to ensure that we nominate candidates that have got the capacity and the skills and the experience to go to Parliament. You realize that most of the candidates that are being nominated are going to be appointed as ministers and also members of the executive committees in the various provinces. So it's essential and critical that when we select those candidates, we pass them through the eye of the needle as the ANC, so that we scrutinize them and ensure that they are fit for purpose. Parliament and legislature is a lawmaking structure. There are lawmaking and policy-making processes that require people who can understand the law, the basics of lawmaking and also policy-making. Those candidates are then required to have the required functionality and professionalism to carry out their work. So this is a very serious process that is entrusted upon the branches of the ANC to select these candidates to go to Parliament and the legislatures. So the successful completion of the process must deliver a national list of 200 ANC candidates for Parliament, a provincial to national ANC list of between 5 to 50 candidates per province, and this is according to the number of registered voters in particular provinces, and 9 provincial legislature ANC lists of the minimum 30 and maximum candidates, also according to the population of registered voters in that province. Then there's also critically the selection of the 9 premier candidates for the ANC. Now, the structures that are involved in the work, central to the work of the selection process is a structure that is the Electoral Committee, which Comrade Mahlengi says is chaired by Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, is then supported by the provincial list committees, which are established in each province in consultation with the provincial executive committees. All those structures are in place, they are ready to work, and they are being trained as we speak, so that they are capacitated and know exactly what to do. The central nerve of the admin work for the kind of work rests within the provincial secretary's office, and that's where all the forms after BGMs are deposited, then go to the PLCs for ordering and vetting, and then forwarded to the Electoral Committee to lead into a process whereby we're going to have the provincial list conference or the extended PEC, which is the normal PEC with ex-officios, but in this case, we allow the alliance partners, SACP, COSATU and also SANCO to have got 5 members. And that also culminates into the national list process, which is the national list conference or the extended NEC. In that, we do also have the ex-officio members from the leagues, but we also then add 10 members per each of the alliance partners and SANCO. So those are the key structures that are there. Then the Electoral Committee will also appoint an agency to run the list conferences. The criteria for candidates to qualify for nominations have been said. I'll just add quite a few. That firstly, there is this issue of preference given to those who have got formal qualifications or post-matric qualifications. This is not to exclude those comrades with experience and skills to function at the level of legislatures and parliament. So we balance that requirement with the skills. If comrades don't have formal qualifications, we look at their track record and functionality. We should be able to make them part of the list that is then forwarded for registration. Then there are also modules that are compulsory from the OR Tambo Leadership School online. The modules on the history of the ANC, building organization, understanding government, also economic and sustainable development. Then the issue of having no criminal record, we go further to say that private prosecutions are excluded. unless these result in criminal convictions by a court of law. This is just to safeguard the ANC and its members from abuse of private prosecutions to try and exclude others on the basis of such processes. Then so no candidate also is eligible for nomination if he or she is temporarily suspended pending the outcome of a court case or disciplinary hearing. No candidate shall be eligible for nomination if his or her case has been finalized by the Integrity Commission and the NEC has approved and implemented the IC's recommendation for a suspension of membership or stepping aside from leadership or public office. Now, we say this because there's been a lot of interest around this matter. You'll find that the Integrity Commission has got recommendations presented to the National Executive Committee, but those recommendations have not been accepted or implemented by the National Executive Committee. It means that we are not able to use them to disqualify candidates until they are implemented. Those who are already public representatives or members of government executives must perform satisfactorily in their performance review. There is a performance review process that is being done for public representatives. We'll then take that into account in determining whether people qualify to be on the list. Candidates must also accept organizational decisions and abide by the ANC and electoral codes of conduct. Then they must also agree to sign deployment contracts, which bind them to be loyal to the decisions of the ANC, including redeployment and recall, as the circumstances, such as performance or lack thereof, may dictate from time to time. Then there's the issue of the balancing of the list, which I think Comrade Mahlengi covered very, very well in terms of the 50% on women and representation of the broader MDM fraternity. The nomination process starts at the BGM level through BGMs that should reach quorum. 50 plus 1% is the quorum. These BGMs are strictly chaired by the branch chairs and observed by the branch electoral observers or electoral officers who are nominated at the branch level and trained by ourselves, as I've indicated that the electoral committee has started with the training. Voting is by show of hands. It's not a secret ballot because we are not coming out with one candidate, but we're coming up with a list. So a show of hands will suffice. Then from the branch level, they are also ordered in terms of gender so that every second candidate on the list is a woman and every fifth candidate it's a young person. They should also be photographed at the branch level so that record is kept there in case of dispute. We're able to utilize that to deal with the disputes. The screening and vetting is done in accordance with all these rules that we're articulating. The criminal record, the membership, the disciplinary issues from the Integrity Commission, the financial declarations, and other considerations. So it's a thorough process that's going to be undertaken by the provincial list committees for the provincial list. There are two lists at the province, and the electoral committee for the national list. Now, all these candidates are going to be interviewed by the electoral committee and the provincial list committee. All of them, whether they've been in parliament before or not, is not going to be a matter. So it means that even the ministers and the MECs are going to go through interviews to determine if they're still fit for purpose and to be included in the list. Then let's deal with the issue of the selection of premiers. There are also fundamental changes and reforms there. The extended PEC should recommend 3 premier candidates from amongst the nominated candidates from the list. At least 2 of the 3 premier candidates recommended by the PEC must be female. Current first-term female premiers must automatically be included amongst the 3 premier candidates recommended by the PEC, and concerted efforts to ensure that female premiers also serve 2 full terms shall be made subject to performance. That's very important because we are going into a direction where the ANC must have more female premiers in the provinces. Should the extended PEC wish to include one person who is not nominated yet, but who will bring capacity, experience, expertise, and popularity, they may do so for one of the 3 premier nominations, provided the majority of the extended PEC will support this nomination. Before the national officials decide on the final candidate, they must interview all candidates. If the national officials are not satisfied that some of the candidates meet the criteria, they may add at least 2 more names to be considered through interviews. The chair of the electoral committee or his nominee shall be an observer during the interviews of the premier candidates. Then there are prohibitions on the use of money. The electoral committee shall enforce the same rules as those applied during the NEC elections. No slate of candidates may be organized or promoted through circulation of predetermined lists of candidates which are sent or circulated for branches to rubber stamp. So that is strictly prohibited. Anybody found doing that will be taken to task. And if it's candidates doing that, they will be disqualified for contravening the rules of the organization. Individual candidates may be promoted based on merit and meeting the criteria, but money must not be used to do that lobbying. We are saying here candidates must not influence the process. They must allow the branches to nominate them and decide on their own if they want them to be on the list without any influence of money or material gain whatsoever. The use of money on campaigning to influence the outcomes of the nominations process is strictly prohibited and is forbidden. Social media campaigns are allowed, but no negative campaign, no paid or printed regalia to be handed out or used to campaign for specific nominees. So the process, in a nutshell, has started now. It's going to be concluded in October, and by January the 8th, the ANC will deploy the candidates to join the elections campaign and work towards the election. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Chief Matila. At this point, we are going to take any comments, any questions from yourselves, colleagues. I am looking for, I've got Million Guardian over there.
This is nothing, just one question. It's around what the Secretary General had said in a previous media briefing around those who have been named or implicated in state capture, who did not go to the Integrity Committee and were now going to DC. Is that going to be factored in terms of the selection process?
Thank you very much. May I just take an additional question or comment so we can respond?
Specifically surrounded from UJFM. Mine is on stability. We just heard the police commissioner outlining that they don't have the much capacity to deal with the issue of the Zamazamas. What is the ANC stance on his statement on that?
All right, thank you very much. Chief, shall I invite you to comment on the matter of those of our members who may find themselves needing to appear before the NDC during this process of selecting public representatives to represent the ANC, and what is the status of things? Certainly from where we are sitting, anyone that is before the NDC must undergo that process, but I won't speak on behalf of the Electoral Committee because it's a committee that prosecutes its business in ways that are guided by its guidelines. Let me just speak to the matter of the pronouncements by the police commissioner. Our statement is very clear, my brother, that we are asking government to deploy more resources to fighting illegal mining. We are on record as far as that is concerned, including strengthening the various agencies that are in a position to address that. And so we will look up to the security cluster in government to pull all resources together to help us address the scourge of Zamazamas. That is the official position of the African National Congress. I do believe that we should be in a position to also report progress as far as this work, which is being undertaken under the stewardship of our Peace and Stability Subcommittee of the National Executive Committee. I may provide you further details into the future in terms of breakthroughs in this regard, but I do know that this is something that is really right on our radar. Thank you very much. Chief, if you could speak to the issue of those comrades that are supposed to appear before the NTC by virtue of having appeared or being flagged by the State Capture Commission report, and where their standing is in relation to eligibility for selection.
No, first of all, thank you for that question. Insofar as disciplinary matters are concerned, the only time that we don't allow you to be nominated or to be on the list, firstly, is when you are found guilty by the disciplinary committee. So in this case, that will not be an issue. Then the second consideration is when you have been temporarily suspended pending the outcome of the disciplinary case. So if that happens, then those who are affected will not be allowed to be nominated. That's how it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any matters of interest? I think I see my colleague there from Newsroom.
Junior Kumalo from Newsroom Africa. You spoke about the matter of coalitions and how the Veterans League had phrased it. But our understanding was that the Veterans League were calling for action to be done immediately, in particular to where the ANC is already in coalition with the EFF, particularly Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg. So is there action that's going to be taken in terms of withdrawing from those coalitions immediately, or is the ANC just looking ahead to next year's elections and trying to win decisively there? Just to add one more, there was claims today made by the EFF leader, Julius Malema, in terms of how there is a lot of pressure being exerted on business people who participated or donated to the EFF. He claims that the Premier of Gauteng, Banyaza Lesufi, and the President were behind the scenes trying to see if the individuals that donated to the EFF are being investigated and those companies don't get any tenders or work with government. Is there any truth to such allegations, or did you even hear about these allegations that were made by the EFF leader?
Thank you very much. Maybe to your last question, Junior, I think the onus or the burden is on the person or the party that is making the allegation. I can't sit here on behalf of the African National Congress and corroborate something that we don't know about. That will be hearsay. So I think maybe you should take it back to the EFF to ask for them to give you evidence of that kind of badgering or pressuring from both the President and the Premier of Gauteng. I do believe that the African National Congress and its leadership nationally as well as in our provinces do understand that we exist in a democratic environment. There is no inkling whatsoever on the part of the ANC about the need to assist in allowing a free space for political activity, and also for different parties, including opposition parties, to have friends and to receive donations of whatever kind for as long as it is within the law. So that is our principled stance as the ANC. But I can't sit here and corroborate something or answer something that is not known to the African National Congress. So I think that needs to go back to the accuser to produce that evidence, and of course also take it to relevant offices, whether it's the ethics committees in Parliament or wherever else where the President and the Premier of Gauteng can be held to account. To your question related to the coalitions, of course you can't get out of a coalition of whatever kind by stealth or simply because you feel that it's not working. It must undergo a conversation. But indeed, veterans are very clear. I won't speak on their behalf. They are able to, they've got their own communications machinery as an independent body in the ANC, the body of opinion. But yes, veterans have been quite unequivocal about frowning upon the certain coalition arrangements that we've had, and with a particular focus on some of those coalition arrangements in Gauteng. And that conversation is taking place within the ANC. The submission by the Veterans League, which was adopted at their conference this weekend, will then serve at the next National Executive Committee of the ANC, where then it undergoes internal processing. When that has happened, I would suspect that we will come back here and give you a reflection of the ANC as a mother body upon receiving that submission formally from the Veterans League. I hope that addresses that aspect. And then can I just turn and look around? Do we have any other matters of concern with the statement and matters related to how we're going to be selecting our public representatives? Okay, I take it that this is done, and I'd like to, with that, to thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for your time this afternoon. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much.